Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Cardiff Central podcast with me, Lee G. Joining me as always, my co-hosts Alan and Carwyn. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening, Lee. You're right. Hi, Carwyn.
Evening, boys. How you doing?
Good. So, yeah, people listened last week, boys, and we're back again. Yay.
I know. I couldn't believe it. We're getting reactions on social media saying that they're listening it, they're enjoying it. It's a bit weird, really, isn't it? I just feel like you're talking out the window, but people are actually responding, which is good.
And nobody's sworn at us yet. Nobody's accused us of being biased yet, which I'm a little bit disappointed with. I'll be honest with you.
That's the whole point of the pod, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. It's you do get to the point where you're halfway through the season and you're like, nobody's accused me of being one-eyed yet. I got to try harder. I gotta push this out there. I got to do better. But so yeah, how's your week been then, guys? Anything exciting? Anything interesting?
I haven't got exciting. I've got house moving process and all that sort of renting process. I was debating today is for a 1,300 per month rent property. Is it too cheeky to put an offer of £1,000 in? But I rethought that and decided not to go that low. But yeah, it's that sort of process at the moment. That's an absolute nightmare.
Oh, Gordon Bennett, that's mass. My first. This is going to tell you how old I am now. My first house, the first house I bought, was a 3-bed house with a garden and parking and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you're going to be sick. My mortgage was £500 a month, and that was on 100% mortgage. That tells you, one, how old I am, and two, just how bad the housing market is. I feel your pain, mate.
Honestly, the rental is an absolute disaster. But basically, me and my partner made the decision that we couldn't really justify buying a house straight away because what happens if down the line it goes a bit belly up. So yeah, that's basically been my life over the past week and balancing work with that, which is always fun. What about you, Aled?
Yeah, I feel your pain. I've been trying to sell my house for a while now, and the chain's just fallen through again. It's quite frustrating. It's every time it's on the market for less than a fortnight, and we get an offer really quickly at asking price because it's a really nice house. And then a month or two down the line, some issue props up with the conveyancing, and some of it's back on the market, and just such a frustrating, archaic, long-winded process when you're just trying to sell a house. Frustrating thing is I'm actually chain free at the moment, so I'm living with family, so there's literally just this house on a lump of land down in Devon that I don't visit that often. If anyone's listening, I'm not going to give you my address because I don't go, but it is attended regularly. Yeah, it's such a frustrating process. Once I get my next house, I'm just going to stay in it for the rest of my life, I think.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Well, we came very close to selling this house, and I think we got to the stage where someone viewed it, said they wanted to buy it, and then just didn't follow through, and then just gave up. So my parents were like, "Yeah, fine," which I can understand that as well.
Yeah. I bought this house 21 years ago. 21 year is it? Yeah, 21 years ago. And with ours, when we sold our house, the person that was buying our house went, "No, I'm a cash buyer," because they were young and all that kind of stuff. No chain and nothing, no cash buyer. Right, okay. And then literally 2 days before we were due to exchange, no, after we'd exchanged it, 2 days before completion, so when they're doing all the finance stuff, turns out they had a house to sell. But it was okay, because somebody's agreed to buy it and I'll have all the cash. I said, yeah, but that's not a cash, that's not what we mean by a cash sale, And like there was like 3 other people in the chain that thankfully it delayed our house by 2 days. It delayed completion by 2 days because everything was in order. But when you're sitting there, you go, "Do you know how much you pay solicitors?" And somebody didn't check to see.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the chain fell through, and then the same bloke then came back in. He kind of said, "Oh, I'm not really sure." Dropped out, came back in, and dropped out again later. And you think, well, it's a lot. Everyone's paying a lot of money to these solicitors. It's a quite, in my head, you don't put an offer on a house unless you're actually really committed to moving and living in it. And it's like, what on earth are you doing unless you've got so much money that you're just throwing at a house because you're bored. But it's not the kind of hobby I've ever had to enjoy. But yeah, it's just it's a nightmare for a process. I mean, I still think it's better than renting. Sorry, Carwyn, but just because if you can, obviously not everyone can. But just spending that amount, but the rental market's even worse than just throwing that much money at a landlord. To me,
it's dead money, isn't it? It's just I wouldn't be doing it unless I was moving in with someone. And I've seen like without going too much into detail on a rugby podcast about my friend's situations. So a mate of mine, him and his partner bought a house and it went belly up quite soon after. So looking at that and then going, yeah, maybe don't risk it just in case. Because like, yeah, as you mentioned, lawyers cost a lot of money, and that's where I was going.
Yeah. So now we put the world to rights. Let's talk rugby.
I was going to say, when always started the Conveyancing 101 podcast. I've got 3 months' experience as a receptionist at a law firm for a conveyancing firm. That helps, but I don't think that we need this.
No, we'll stick to what we know. We'll stick to rugby, and we'll have a little bit of chat about Cardiff Scarlets last Friday. So, both of you there? Were you both at the game?
Yeah, both there. I think Carwyn was working in the media box, so I was just in my normal seat, which is good.
Yeah, I was enjoying the life of giving updates, which was more challenging by the hour as the shirt numbers came out. Don't know if you made any sense of those team sheets, but we had number 28, I think James Botham, number 59, Scott Williams. I was like, oh my God, what is going on here? But yeah, it was an interesting one. We'll talk about fly-offs in a minute, but I was particularly excited to see Arwell Thomas on the bench for Cardiff on the weekend. That was what the team sheet that Cardiff supplied us with, but rather than Arwell Robson, 48-year-old former Wales fly-off Arwell Thomas might have been an interesting selection at fly-off for a juniors game or, well, experience game. It was, I don't know, Alan may want to go into it more on this, but it was a bit of a surprise, maybe, how well Cardiff played.
Yeah, I think so. Pleasantly surprised. I was thinking the other day, we were very negative in episode 1 because we were talking about the off season. I think if anyone's starting with episode 1, they probably won't subscribe, but if you start on this episode, you might, because over the whole season, we did play quite a lot of good rugby last year. I think ending the way we did was a bit of a downer. So it was nice to kind of blow some of the cobwebs out. I think there was a lot of people expecting us to get hammered every single game this year. I think a lot of the young players are massively up for it. I think some of the new faces are as well. And like you said before, like we said last week, if it's going to be how those two elements kind of mesh, that's going to make or break the season. But obviously, with a pinch of salt because it's only a friendly and it's young sides and yada yada yada. But on the first outing, it's pretty good to see. A lot of positive kind of rugby played, as in they look like they want to attack the line, and play fast rugby, which is ultimately what everyone wants to see because it's entertaining rugby.
Yeah, I think there were loads of good performances. Player of the match was obviously Theo because he was electric with his Theo Cabango, that is. Obviously, his 2 tries. Second one, he noted a nice little block from Alex Mann, which was missed by an absence of TMO. But it was, it beats 4 or 5 defenders, scores in the corner, absolutely electric. And he's like a new signing. I'd forgotten really how long he'd been out. Been out for 9 months last season. And we were joking with him afterwards and talking about what his season last season was. It was basically watching his brother play football for a season. That was watching Cardiff rugby. That was his year. Getting banter from his brother for his brother scoring the winner at the Cardiff City Stadium, and that's the sort of year he's experienced. But then you look at some of the other performances. Titus De Beer, he looked composed. I know there's a lot of people that are a bit iffy about him. Is he the real deal? Is he good enough? But I thought he looked good, and I've always liked Arwell Robson. And as an attacking threat, I think he's got a fair share of pace. I didn't realise how quick he was, and he looked a threat off the bench. Yes, you've got to mitigate it with it was a very young opposition. I think the oldest player for Scarlets was 26 in the starting lineup, but still, it was a very good performance from Cardiff. And then you mentioned some of the youngsters coming through that back row. Well, that looks like a back row for the next 10 years. So, we talk about the strength that Cardiff have got with the likes of both them, Ellis Jenkins, Falto et al. But that back row there, De La Rua, what's he, 18? Alex Mann served his apprenticeship. Now he's ready to really set the world alight, I think, coming this season. And Mackenzie Martin looks a beast at 8 for his age. I wouldn't want to tackle him. He looks a real threat.
Yeah, I think it's weird because it's almost like an old-fashioned game where you don't really. There's so many youngsters. I think a lot of the chat around me in the crowd was, "Who's he? Who's he? Oh, he looks young. Oh, that guy looks like he's in school." It's like, oh, number 27. Hang on, let me get the. They don't do programs anymore, which is a shame because it'd be perfect for that kind of thing. But Mackenzie was really good. So was, as you said, Alex Mann and Lucas De La Rua. I think some of the other forwards in the front five were good. Shane Lewis-Hughes playing out of position.
Yeah.
I think I think, as you said, I think the scrum was probably the weakest part. It was very shaky and kind of fell apart a lot.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, it's a very young Scarlet side, and realistically, I don't really know. Hopefully, Lee can tell us when we unmute him. Because you look at the 9, 10, 12 for us that's probably going to be our starting team. You got Ellis Bevan, either Tinnis or Arwell and Ben Thomas. That's pretty much going to be the starting spine, really. So,
yeah.
I don't feel like it was our team playing the Scarlets Academy. It was kind of a hodgepodge from both, I think. Yeah, and I think overall the backs did well. It was really interesting to see different combinations that we maybe not seen. I think Jacob Beetham was out for a long time as well. He came back and he had a really good game. He was really reliable. And then I think when Arwell came on, they moved him to inside centre, and Cam Winnett came on at fullback. So some interesting combinations there. I was actually just watching an interview with the head coach, and as you said, they're a young team, and maybe not for this season, but looking 2, 3, 4 years down the line, if we can retain players, which will be a big factor, but if we can retain them, you're going to have a good group of young players that hopefully gel together, and it's kind of a long-term project sort of thing.
Yeah.
As I said last week, I absolutely love Theo Kabanga. It's such a shame he got injured because he's one of these players that you lean forward in your seat when he gets the ball. It's that kind of electric atmosphere a little bit where you're like, oh, I'm not really sure what he's going to do because, and with game time and the right kind of development, I think he could become a real class act.
Yeah, I agree. And with Beetham, yeah, you're spot on. He looks a big lad, like completely different sort of fullback to Winnett. Winnett's sort of a hot stepper, elusive runner. Beetham's quick. Don't get me wrong, but he's also got that power that he can add to his game. Sort of, okay, it's a bit of an unfair comparison because he's so young in his rugby development, but more the Lee Byrne-esque sort of figure, if you want to use that comparison. But yeah, I think you mentioned the scrum front row. Cardiff changed their front row right as Scarlets brought on Wyn Jones and Sam Wainwright. I think that's like, you've got to see that and check me being positive all the time. But like, I think that might be the mitigating factor. And yeah, you mentioned about Scarlets. They had a lot of young players, but without saying you can only be what's in front of you, Cardiff handsomely, comfortably beat what was in front of them that day. And I'm speaking to some of the Scarlets lads afterwards. They were surprised. They weren't expecting to be humbled in that way, I think. And they were. I think they were very frustrated, very disappointed with that performance. And they'll be looking to put things right this weekend. I don't know, Lee, have you seen some of the highlights from that game? Or what's the chatter been around that performance from Scarlets as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it always falls into two kind of camps with pre-season stuff where it's really one camp going, that's just pre-season, we're just giving some of the young'uns a run out and all that kind of stuff. And then there's another school of thought where I am, which is more, the purpose of a pre-season is to get you ready for the season. So by throwing in a load of players, don't get me wrong, we've been waiting to see Scott Williams back. We didn't actually know if Scott Williams was coming back because he signed last year on a 1-year contract, and then there's been no news about whether he's coming back or not, and all of this kind of stuff. So it was great to see him back on the park, but there's quite a lot of people going, we want to get ready for the season. We want to hit that first game out in South Africa. It's not going to be an easy game in South Africa. We need to be going into that game ready to rock. And then, some of these younger players might actually be exposed to rugby through the season rather than now and then. Okay, you might, some of those players aren't going to see a Scarlets camp until next year. So, it's frustrating along those lines. From what I've seen, people enjoyed the game. I think more because they got a chance to just go to a stadium and watch some rugby more than anything. It just feels like so long being out of the stadium watching the game. So, I haven't heard too many complaints. I haven't heard too much praise either. To be honest, from the Scarlet side, it's been very much, well, that was a learning game, and it is what it is. If we'd have won it, would the message have been the same? Would we still be classing it as a learning game? I don't think so. So yeah, for me, it was an opportunity lost to maybe put a few more combinations out that we should have. Our guy outside half, we pretty much forgotten about him because all the talk had been about Yohan Lloyd.
Yeah,
and everyone was just focused on Yohan Lloyd. So stuff like that.
Yeah, Titkin was Bucks Player of the Year last year, so he's a real talent. He hit a 50-22, didn't he, Alad, on the weekend? It was quality from about his own 10-meter line that went out from, I think it was pretty much first phase from a scrum. He just smashed it into the opposite 22, which was class. But yeah, you mentioned a couple of those combinations, like Scott. We can compare and contrast. Scott's come back, and I've got to be honest, he did look rusty, and I'm not digging him out personally. He's been out for a long time. Whereas Theo and Jacob have come back and hit the ground running, and that can have a huge impact in your first 3-4 months of the season. So it's a really good, positive thing for the Cardiff lads, and Scarlets will have a chance to put things right this weekend, obviously. But for the Cardiff lads looking forward, I think it's a really positive start with some depth there that I didn't really think was there. You talk about like fullback now. We've got Beetham, Winner, Matthew Morgan. That's 3 15s that I'd be happy enough to see in the 15 jersey, and Ben Thomas playing there if he has to, which I think he said himself after the game that he doesn't really want to play there, but he'll do it if he needs to. But yeah, a bit more strength and depth than maybe we thought pre-season. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think overall it'd be interesting to see how much those players actually feature. Because if they're not going to, there's not much point in them being in that game, really. And the same for the Scarlet sort of squads. I think given the squad sizes we're all having, I think we'll all have to be playing them at some point. So it's good to see that they're potentially going to be able to step up to a certain level. Obviously, it's not going to be the same as a full URC fixture. But on the other hand, you also want to, they are pre-season games. You don't want to overreact and say, "Oh, we're going to win the league" on the back of it. If you lose 2 in a row, for example, if we lose 2 Ospreys on Friday, we've won 1 out of 2. That's a pretty good start, and then we've got Benetton at home, so it's a more comfortable start. Whereas if the Ospreys lose on Friday, you're already going into the season with 2 losses on the bounce, and then Lee, if your guys lose 2 and then go away to South Africa, that's suddenly a lot of pressure at the start of the season, which you want to start on the strongest foot you can. Really, there's not loads of games either, like because it's not a true home and away league. So like if we lose to Benetton, you don't get a chance of revenge. So you do kind of want to hit the ground running, I think. So it'd be interesting to see which players in both squads, but also mainly for Cardiff, which players, how often they're going to be playing, which is going to be good. And there was a few players we didn't see, sort of like obviously the internationals, but sort of like your Thomas Youngs and your Kieran Azarati and Josh Turnbull's quite interesting. I've not seen much of him in a lot of the pre-season kind of training videos they've done. So
Yeah, he's still carrying a knock, still out with a knock. So yeah, he's out with a knock, and I think Tamani and Seb were out with the virus on the weekend, so that's why they didn't play as well. So there's a few of those. Sorry, not to butt in, but yeah, that's
that's good. That's what we're here for. That's the inside gossip. I don't know that.
That's the information that I know. But yeah, so I suppose they'll be back next week, maybe week after. But Josh, I'm not 100% sure on return time. I can ask the question whenever I see them, but yeah, from what I know, it's maybe a week or two still.
Yeah, that's good.
So given that, I mean, the way things tend to work at the minute is everyone's playing one game at home, one game away, and you tend to have a strong team when you're playing your home game and a slightly younger, weaker team away. So given that you've got one win under your belt now, right? Do you guys go to Ospreys with a slightly stronger squad than what you might have expected to build that momentum? So, do you know what I mean? So if you go in there,
so if you'd asked me last week, I would have said that my plan, bear in mind I'm not paid to make these decisions. I'm unpaid to moan about them on the podcast. Would be a young side at home, not whether you're at home or not, a young side in your first game, and then a stronger, closer to starting side in your second game, and then that's kind of preparing you for the first fixture in the URC. And you kind of want to use that as a stepping stone. But I mean, I've just watched an interview where Matt said they're going to use the same squad basically. A couple of players who weren't available will come in, but he was quite impressed with the youngsters, so he wants to give them another go. And I think if as we said, the whole point of this rebuilding season is you're giving people the opportunities to step up and put their hand up. And if they do, I think you need to reward that, acknowledging that it's probably going to be a bit of a step up against the Ospreys on Friday, and then a massive step up then once the league starts.
Yeah, I think it's that we'll talk about it, I'm sure, when we get into talking about Wales as well, but it's that balancing act between building combinations, building fitness versus risk of injuries. And I think you mentioned that 9, 10, 12 combination, that needs time to build, 9 to 10 and 10 to 12. Though I think it's fit, as well, Alice said, that's likely to be the 9, 10, 12 combination start of the season. So I'd like to see those three start again. I'd like to probably see, we've had Jacob maybe start Cam at fullback this weekend. That might be the rotation. And then you sort of have a judgment of both playing a half each in both games. Wings, if you stick an Aled Summerhill in there versus an Owen Lane, you're not gonna learn much. So is there a youngster that we can try out on those two wings to find out more about them? That back row, I really like it. So it's about then making a judgment of, okay, they might not be our starting front row, starting back row, I should say, sorry, for the start of the campaign. So do we need game time into Jim Botham or Ellis Jenkins, who, let's be honest, Ellis Jenkins hasn't played much rugby over the last 3-4 years. So would it be good to get him an extra 80 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever they decide on? And then as well, balancing the other two with him. So is that a Jim Botham and Mackenzie Martin at 8, or is it possibly an Alex Mann at 8, giving him a turnaround to see what he can do at 8, where he's maybe not played as much rugby? It's an interesting one. I probably put this to Alan maybe for next week, but I was trying to work out how many nailed on starters there are for that game against Benetton on the first game, and you talk about that 9, 10, 12. That's probably the first three that I can think of. Outside of that, probably Rhys Carey at loosehead, considering Domachowski's out with Wales as a nailed on. Outside of those, I'm struggling to say, 100% he's starting, 100% they're starting. I don't know if you feel maybe Owen Lane and Theo Cabango as it stands with Josh.
Yeah, that's the two I was going to add if you hadn't, just because I think Cabango is great, as you'll hear me say a lot over the year. but he played really well, and I think he's been out a long time. So getting that game time's good. And when Owen Lane's playing well, he plays really well as well. So apart from maybe number 13 and fullback, I say the backs are pretty much sorted, which is weird because a couple of weeks ago I couldn't have told you anyone in the starting 15. And I think what's interesting is 2 or 3 months ago when the list of leavers came out, I was just thinking, right, we just need to find someone and stick them in a shirt and send them on their way, because I think we're at the point where, and we still are, if we get a few injuries, we're going to be in trouble, but we'll worry about that later. But it's like, are we going to have a 15 to put out, or a 23, or match day squad or what have you? But we're already talking about game time and managing fitness and that sort of stuff. So that's really good to see. And then we might be having a different conversation if some of these people are playing well in pre-season games and then we get hammered by Benetton first game. That'll be more of a test, I think. But based on what we've seen so far, it's looking promising, and I didn't think we'd be sitting here having these kind of conversations necessarily. Not to overreact, obviously, as we said, big pinch of salt. But
Yeah, well, you mentioned we've come a long way. I've come a long way, definitely, in the 2 weeks since we've been doing this pod. I think you mentioned the negativity earlier. I think that was purely directed at me because I was very negative at the start of the season.
I was negative as well. I think it's such a long off season. I think the Dragons said was their last home game like February or March or something, because they weren't in the knockout stages and the way their away fixtures fell. So that period to October, end of September, and all these negative stories and social media, you just got a lot of time to build up a bit of negativity. And I think, as Lee said, people just like going to the rugby and sitting in the stands or on the terrace and having a chat. It felt like you're back at first day of school after some holidays and you were meeting all your mates again, which is nice to see. And just really best part of the week, really, which is good.
Did your mum make you polish your shoes and iron your shirt the night before?
Yeah, in my blazer. Made me take a photo at the door.
First day back photo, yeah. That's what you should do. You should get everybody to have their first day back photo for the first game this season. So
people did that.
So what are your expectations for is it Friday or Saturday you're playing?
It's Friday, so I'm not able to go, unfortunately. I think Carwyn said you're not either. Which is a bit of a shame. So we might have to get a match report or highlights we'll be relying on. But
mine's a bit up in the air depending on where I get deployed. But at the moment I'm purely studio based, so no deployment for me.
So I think, as we said last week, I haven't got any expectations. It's quite a nice season because there's not really that much pressure on us. I think there's some pressure on individuals because people are expecting. There is an expectation maybe that it's going to be a challenge. I think there's a pressure that they all want to prove people wrong. But in terms of the team's performance, I don't think there's that much pressure. It's quite refreshing to just think, right, well, we're just going to go to game, watch them play, see how they get on, and hope if there's some good performances, either individually or as a team, it's going to be a positive. I think because we've won one game, which, it's a new era, if you like, under a new regime and a new kind of setup. There's some good attacking rugby, and it's more about the combinations, as you said. If we lose, as long as we don't get absolutely slaughtered, I think if some of those combinations play well, and maybe we find out that that person's not necessarily going to play 8, they're better at 6, and or those 2 centres might not be working as well as these other 2 centres. I think that's more what we need to try and get out of this game on Friday than going gung-ho for a win, I think.
Yeah, I think there's more pressure on Ospreys after they lost against Dragons as well. I think that's going to put the pressure on them. I think they'd have expected, Ospreys going to Dragons, they always seem to struggle, but I think there's more pressure on them than Cardiff. The one area I would like to see how it goes, I'm quite interested, is the front row, because Ospreys always have a strong front row, that's by the by, but you're going to have one of Tom Botha or Rhys Henry, and Rhys Henry was superb at back end of last season for Ospreys at tight end, and then a youngster at loose head. I think that'll probably be one of Garen Phillips or one of those. So for Cardiff front row, one of the it's likely if it's Azarati or if it's Kieran Parker, one of those two are starting. And then Lou said it'll be either Rhys Carey or Domachowski. It's going to be quite a strong front row for Cardiff. So you'd like to think Cardiff can try and get parity, if not comparable with what is not quite a second choice Ospreys front row, but one and a bit Ospreys front row, if that makes sense. So yeah, I that's probably one area I'm interested to see more than anything else. Everything else I think will take care of itself to some extent. You know, if the backs 10 see that battle between Tynus or Ardwell versus whoever it is at 10 for the Ospreys, whether it's a Dan Edwards, whether we can put pressure on him, who's a youngster at 10, or Jack Walsh, who's didn't have his best season last season. So yeah, like I say, there's a lot of interesting battles in there, but at the end of the day, I don't think the result's the most important thing. As Alice mentioned, we've already got a win. Anything beyond that now is a bonus, and it's all about managing plus getting match fitness into those players' legs and hopefully come away with a good performance.
This is why I like talking to Cardiff supporters, because you've gone from we were fantastic, we were amazing, best guy, I don't want to say we're going to win the league, but to as long as we don't get hammered, and it's all about that. And you come down this hill really, really quickly, and then come back up again at the end.
Hold up, we didn't say anything like. We didn't say anything like we're happy with a loss. It's all about the performance. That was very much. I've spent time with managers, and I'm learning the lingo now. This is the language we need. I think it's true though. For this game, I think Benetton is win at all costs. I think that when we come to that, I will be talking about that's one that we need to win. But this is still pre-season. It's still pre-season, and just enjoy the ride, I think, for the time being, and enjoy being back at rugby.
So to divert for a few seconds, on the Ospreys Dragons game, have you seen on social media the amount of people having a go at the Dragons for taking kicks? So Dragons had 2 penalties.
They went for the points.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's not cricket. Not during the pre-season. That's just. It depends. Have they changed their kicker? Maybe they did win. So brownie points going into the season. It's all about bragging points. I'll go back on what I said. We want to hammer the Ospreys no matter what. That's all that matters. Let's go for 3-0. 3-0 win. That'll do us.
But that was going to be my question. If it comes down to the end of the game, and it's 25 all, and it's 79 minutes on the clock, and you've got a penalty on the 22, do you kick to the corner or do you slot it?
Slot it.
No, I'd slot it. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. See, and
but what I will say is that's a very different scenario than the Dragons taking penalties from about 50 minutes onwards, which is what they were doing. So
yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, I'll give you that.
That's the one thing I would say. It's almost the Dragons going, "Oh, our driving lineup's not great, so we're going to give that a miss." That's my interpretation.
Yeah, it depends on the reason. I said it is good to go into a season with a buoyant home crowd who's you've already seen your team win at home. So, and maybe your kicker just wants to practice kicking for points.
Yeah.
As you said, and if your lineout's a bit ropey for whatever reason on the day, I don't want to make excuses for Dragons. They should be scoring loads of tries, shouldn't they? We did.
They've got all the money now, haven't they?
Yeah. I was going to say, you're sounding like you're on Dragons' side there, Aled. I mean, come on, man.
Well, you have to give them. You have to give them something.
So, okay. So, I mean, last week's predictions for the Scarlets Cardiff score was a bit kind of.
I can't even remember what I said. Well, I said 35-25, I think.
Yeah, I said a comfortable Scarlets win, obviously. So
I didn't mean to drop my headphones, but I did have a horrendous prediction there. I think I said something like 31-20 to Scarlets. Pretty much the other way around.
So what are you thinking this weekend then? What are you thinking for Ospreys? Who wants to go first?
I'll go for another Cardiff win because I said that last week and I was right. So I'm going to be the voice of positivity. I think it'll be a closer game. I'll say Cardiff by like 7 or something.
See, I'm toying between two things, but one, I don't know if I want to be labelled Mr. Negative on episode 3, or not that I wasn't going for that battle on episode 1. But additionally, I'm very superstitious, and I feel like if I predict the Cardiff win, we're going to lose. So I'm going to go with. I think it'll be tight. Fair. I think they'll be within 5 points either way. So I'll say 24-21 to Ospreys, just purely because I predicted a Cardiff loss last week to keep the trend. So I will be predicting a Benetton loss come week 1 of the trend. Lost to Benetton week 1 of the season. So, but yeah, I do think it'll be tight within 5 points either way.
That's got to be the worst excuse for predicting your own side to lose.
Yeah.
I'm superstitious and I've done it once.
I'm sticking with it. So, tell you what, if Cardiff lose this weekend, I'll keep on doing it for the rest of the season. Sorry, Cardiff win.
Cardiff win. Yeah, if Cardiff lose, you want to stop.
I can't even work out what I'm doing. But yeah, that's my plan now. But I don't know. I think I do think it's going to be interesting though. Those battles, that back row battle could be really good. Because Ospreys, despite having a whole bunch of players away, that back row, you've still got a Tipperick possibly to play, but you've still got Morgan Morris, still got Harry Deeves, you've still got Morgan Morse. Those are youngsters coming through that'll want to put a stamp on the game versus Mackenzie Martin versus Morgan Morse. I'd pay to watch that one any day of the week. That sounds like a real battle for the future, battle for the next 5-10 years, hopefully, in regional derbies and Wales shirts. So, well, that could be a class game.
Absolutely. Well, as a Scarlet, I'm on the side of anyone who plays against the Ospreys, obviously. So I'm going for a big win for you guys on the weekend, because anything that annoys the Ospreys is going to be a good thing in my book. So that's that one nailed on. So should we move on to World Cup, or have I missed anything? Have we missed anything from Cardiff? Has there been any? I haven't seen any signings this week.
It's all gone quiet on that front. I don't think there's been much news. There's just been a lot of talk about the game, really, and some interviews, which is good to see.
Yeah. The only other one is the line on Lilo, which is Hala Hollow, which is Lilo had a great ovation on the weekend, by the way. That we didn't mention that him after his re-signing, but Hala Hollow, I think the line was last week that if they've got the money, they will do it, but they are looking at it, and he is still training with the squad. So that'll excite Cardiff fans, because I think everyone that's in blue and black wants to see Hala Hollow back in Cardiff Farms Park, and he's such a servant to the club that he deserves. I think he deserves it now rather than wait until whether he's fit or not. But that's just my take.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a bad 80s cop movie, but I think he's on 97 caps, so he's only 3 caps away from getting his 100. So I think if he could get his 100th cap, that'd be very popular with the crowd. As you said, Lilo got a massive cheer when he went on. So we'll see. I don't know if there's any money left in the budget, or if they're even thinking about it. But hopefully, if we keep pestering them, they might change their mind. But it depends on the salary cap, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to sunnier climes in many ways. Wales play Georgia this weekend, gents, in the World Cup. Now, do you want to discuss Fantasy League first, or do you want to discuss Wales and Georgia first? Which way round do you want to do it?
I think we get fantasy first, because I absolutely bottled it. In my defense, this is the first time I've done a fantasy game. I didn't really understand how it works. As I said during the week, I put triple captain on Faletau at the start because I really like Faletau. I thought he was going to have a good game, which he did, but he didn't score any tries. I think he did score. No, he didn't score a try in that game. So I didn't realise you're supposed to triple captain your try scorers, because that's where all the points come from. So since then, I've steadily increased my amount. I captained Penno when they played whichever team they hammered. For that game, he got like 300 points on his own, sort of thing. So I think he got more for me in that game than my entire team on round 1. So I'm getting there, but I think the first round was so bad. I also panicked. I didn't plan it out. I ended up with 3 Japanese backs, one of who got -1. So I also made a mistake of backing Fafita in every game, because
no. Yeah.
and then he got red carded. He got like -12. So
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was always going to come somewhere from.
Yeah.
Just a habit. Well, I did really well in the first week. I spent days and days and days going through, looking at stuff, and I could bring him in there and making sure my points were absolutely there. And then I saw the thing about triple captains, and I happened to have selected Tad Burn in the second row at the time, and went select a triple captain. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll select a triple captain, and it made Tad Burn my triple captain without, and then I couldn't work out how to undo him and put it on someone else. As it happened, he had a really decent game in that first week, but I'm like, oh, well, I know what I'm doing now with triple captain, and you only get one per round. And I was absolutely gutted because I think most people didn't do a triple captain in the first week. They didn't know about it. And then in the second week, they were putting it on wingers and fullbacks and, kicking tens and stuff. And I was sat there going like, you bastards. Because
Yeah.
I was top of our table after week one. And I thought, I got this sorted. I know what to do now. This is it. And now I'm down in like 50th or something like that. I'm like, absolutely destroyed. Destroyed
So
I am.
I'm top of my mini league, which is all I wanted. But I realised just now that my week, it's basically thanks to week 3, because Al had mentioned captaining Peno against Namibia. Some absolute genius, myself, triple captain Peno against Namibia and got a grand total of 498 points. So that was very nice. But since then, I have had a consistent ability to pick the wrong winger. So I picked Malins the week Arundel scored 5. That was really great. Really chuffed with that achievement. Picked Carl Stein last week when Darcy Graham scored 4. So this week, one of who have I picked? I picked Will Jordan. So Leicester Fanganuku is going to score a hat trick at least, or Rio Dyer is going to score a hat trick. So because I picked Lucy Samet, so that's my prediction for this weekend. Is one of those two is going to score an absolute a bunch of tries. But yeah, I also last week I captained Mapimpi, and I'm not saying my issue is comparable to Mapimpi's, but him going off early on was not the ideal scenario for me. Although I'm very gutted that he's out of the World Cup. I hope he gets better soon. But yeah, yeah, that was my immediate reaction, was rather more concerned for my own fantasy team than himself, which I did then feel bad about immediately after.
I had him as captain as well for my team last week, and I wasn't really watching the game. I was doing other stuff, and the game was on in the background. And I came back in, and I'm like, he's stopped scoring. That his points have stopped moving up. There's something wrong with my phone. They're giving him an absolute hammering. What's going on? Yeah, it took me a while, and I had exactly the same reaction. And my wife's like, what's wrong? What, I don't understand. What's the matter? Oh, he's my captain, for crying out loud. This isn't on.
The only thing that mitigated my and actually made it slightly worse was I was really gutted, and then I realised that my closest competitor in my mini league triple captain Mapimpi, and then I celebrated. Then I realised I was going straight to hell. That was the moment I went, yeah, you've lost all integrity. This like taking care of players, caring about head injuries. Right, I realised straight after, I was like, right, calm yourself down. This is a really serious injury, and then South Africa called up AM, and I was like, oh yeah, well, there we go. They although they've lost a great player, they gained a great one as well. So they're not going to be gutted, I suppose.
Yeah. So let's talk real stuff then, less of the fantasy stuff. Let's talk real stuff. Let's talk Wales and Georgia. What are we? I mean, we named the team on Monday.
Yeah, that was really surprising. I don't know. Gatland likes his mind games, but I think everyone's surprised by that. But I think it's good, really. It stops a lot of speculation. I think this week there were, how are we going to be a side like we did against Portugal, or it's going to be more like Fiji? So it kind of stops all that kind of speculation. Probably just sets his stall out early, which is good. The team, similar to what I thought. I thought maybe he'd rest Faletau just because he's been playing a lot, and he's just come back from injury. So he is a warrior. So I guess if anyone can do it, it's him. yeah, apart from that, I'm not surprised we're going as strong as we are. It is a really strong side, and it'd be good to see Anscombe have a bit more game time. But obviously that's through necessity than maybe a choice. But and then I think the bench is interesting with sort of a few opportunity to bring on some youngsters. I think the issue you've got is if you pick the side that played Portugal, as in the fringe or the youngsters, maybe, by the time you reach the quarter-final, some of those players won't have played for 3 weeks, which is quite a long time. But you do need to balance that with we've got quite a strong first 15, but if we pick up some injuries and you've got someone who's coming on who's not played for a while, particularly at centre or somewhere, then you're really going to struggle. So you need to keep people somewhat fresh or somewhat battle ready, I suppose.
Yeah, that centre one is particular. I think I'd like to see Brady come on quite early for one of George or Tompkins, just to keep those two in the bag, or one of them at least in the bag, safe and sound. I think the other changes kind of make sense. Adam Beard's I think he's just had a kid, hasn't he, last week? So take him out the side, let him do some nappies for a week. That might so help the missus out, at least help the home life. Jack Morgan makes sense. The guy's played 380s and been superb in all three. Faletau, you mentioned that there's always this rhetoric around Faletau that he's better the more he plays. So I think it's that balancing act. They always say that. They always say, oh, he's better the more he plays. He's better than. So I think that's what they're thinking. I maybe wouldn't have played both eights, as in him and Wainwright. I maybe have gone with a Lydia at 6 just to keep one of those two eights safe and sound in cotton wool, so we know we've got an 8 for the quarterfinal. Aside from that, Dewi Lake coming in as co-captain / captain of the seconds, which is approaching that sort of level, and I do feel for him, but at the moment, the way the other two are playing, it's difficult for him to get a starting berth against Elias when he's throwing. What was it? Yeah, I think we mentioned it last week, but 13 from 14 from lineouts. It's difficult for Lake to get in there, and then as you mentioned, Gareth Anscombe starting at 10 because of necessity. He needs more game time. I was astonished by how well he played compared to how rusty he was the week before, from Portugal to Australia. So hopefully continue that sort of upward trend this week against Georgia and be a viable or even comparable, contestable option to Biggar come the quarterfinals. But yeah, I think weirdly this weekend the bigger game for Wales is Argentina-Japan, which is a really bizarre situation where we're playing, but my eyes will certainly be on the Argentina-Japan game, because I want to know, are Argentina as bad as they have been, or can they pose a threat? And alternatively, what sort of threat are Japan going to be? I don't know if either of you have got a preference there. We talked about it this week as well on the Welsh pod, but myself,
I'd 100% prefer Japan. I don't know what you were about to say.
Yeah, I agreed. Yeah.
Just because Argentina can be very physical, and we're more likely to pick up injuries, is my thinking. I think we should be able to beat both teams if we play how we have been playing. I can see less of a threat from Japan, whereas Argentina have a habit of suddenly playing really well in World Cup knockout games, and they've been poor in the pool stages. But I think, was it this year or last year, they did beat the All Blacks. They've won fairly recently, so if they find that form again, then it's not going to be an easy game. Whereas Japan, they've had less of those kind of results kind of behind them to kind of fall back on, I think. That's my thinking.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, but I was going to say similar, but my thinking is more to do with, I think it's always going to be a tight game against Argentina. We're going to play similar sorts of rugby, kicking and then contesting and fighting on the ground tooth and nail and all that sort of stuff. Whereas Japan, they're going to come and just throw the ball around and play, with a bit more structure, but similarly to Australia did. And the way our defence is operating at the moment, I'll crack on. If you want to run it from Euro in 22, I think Wales would be quite content with that, because our defence has been very solid and we're prepared to defend for 80 minutes of 80 minutes of a game. If we looked at the Fiji game, pretty much, or 80 minutes minus 4 in inclusions in the 22. So yeah, I'll 100% take Japan over in Argentina. But yeah, that's probably the most interesting bar. Well, unless you're a Scotland fan and think they can beat Ireland, but yeah, that's the most interesting game of the weekend, I think.
So
I do love the conspiracy theory that Ireland and Scotland are going to conspire to knock South Africa out of the World Cup by Scotland scoring 41 points and Ireland 4 tries. I don't know what Ireland gained from that scenario because they've already proven they can beat South Africa. It's just like a vague, they're both Celtic countries, so they must be in cahoots. But
didn't they meet for coffee or something? Townsend, wasn't there an old photo of Townsend and Farrell that's doing the rounds? It's like, oh, what's going on here? And that's
what they're discussing, the game plan. I mean, I've never as a neutral, I've never wanted a specific scoreline so much as to see Scotland win 41-20, just because it's so mathematically unlikely that if it happens, the outrage that it will cause will be
Jared Wright
good sustenance.
Was it Jared Wright and AP Cronje on Twitter? Will be absolutely beautiful to watch. I think that'll be the fallout from that will be. I don't know if anyone remembers in the football there was like a famous game between I want to say Germany and Austria where they played out a 1-0 win, and I like the thought that it gets to 41-20 and they're just like passing the ball to each other, getting scrums, or like, oh no, I've knocked it on again. just by playing for that scoreline. But yeah, it would be. It's too far fetched to even hope for, isn't it? Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, should be a good game though. It'd be interesting to see. As you said, no one probably except the Scottish probably back them to win that game. I don't know if the Scots do, but I'm interested to see where Scotland are because I think there is a gap between the top 4 and the rest of the world, and Scotland are kind of straddling that line a little bit. So I am interested to see where they fall. When it's crunch time. So that'd be good to see. It will be a good game.
I actually think Scotland could give New Zealand a good game, but I think Ireland is a bad matchup. That forward dominance, I think, and the structure that Ireland have will be too strong for Scotland. Likewise, I think South Africa would be the same. But I think a France or a New Zealand would be more of a match for Scotland just because of the style of play, and they both want to play open and fluid. And then Scotland have those threats. They have the Douans, they have the Darcy Graham who's playing out of his skin to threaten the best sides in the world.
So I've got a very different take on the semi-final. I almost don't want us to make the semi-final for a very, very simple reason. And I said this last week, and I spoke about it with my wife in the week, and it didn't go down well. So so as you guys know, I went in for an operation a couple of weeks ago, and that was on my anniversary. We booked a weekend away. We had to move that weekend away. Didn't even look at what was happening. Just went, right, okay, October 20th. So we're going to travel up to. I'm going to pick the wife up from work at 6 o'clock on the Friday night, and then travel up to Cardiff City Centre. So that's going to be, Cardiff City Centre on a semi-final night. That's not going to be easy to get into. So it's about an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 out of push.
Are you saying you want us to get knocked out of the World Cup so there's less traffic?
No, I'm saying that I'm kind of going, there isn't a way for us not to make the quarterfinals. And if we make the semi-finals, I'm screwed whichever way. Because on the Friday night, we're going to get to the hotel and then it's going to be, right, let's go out for a meal. And I'm going to be like, yeah, but the rugby's just kicking off, love. Can we get a pizza in? Do you want to go on your own? If we go as runners up, then we're playing on the Saturday night. And that's like, so we'd have been there for the Friday night, and I'll have definitely had one eye on one semi-final. And then I'll be like, we'd have spent a nice day. We'd have, had a walk around Cardiff. She'd have spent way too much money. Then it'll be, right, let's go out for a meal again. And I'll be like, yeah, but the other semi-finals on. And I've already tried getting out of it. I can't. I've tried suggesting different days. I tried suggesting maybe we bring our daughter with us and she can, go and watch a movie, or I'll pay for them to go and watch bloody. Nothing's happening, boys. I just get this death stare that is like, ice cold, and I mean proper ice cold. There's not even a verbal reply. It's just like, okay, I'll shut up. So I'm dreading this.
You can always watch it on catch up. Yeah, get like a sensory deprivation so you don't see the score, and then watch it in your hotel room on your own when you got a minute. But you have to stay off social media, obviously.
I don't know if either of you watch How I Met Your Mother, and I'm going to be completely judged.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Where you get the glasses and the
glasses, and there's an episode. I could tell by Lee's face that he's never watched How I Met Your Mother. It's like what's he call it? Like sensory deprivation 3000 or something like that, and it's like proper goggles that are blacked out. You can't see, like earmuffs on. You've got blinders either side. You can't see in between. You're gonna have to walk that with that for your anniversary dinner, which will be an interesting look.
I'll have to get a T-shirt printed that says "Don't tell me the score," just so no one is hush now, quiet, because he's not allowed to know the score. I don't think it would work somehow.
Yeah, no, I don't. I've got the opposite problem, which is I hope Wales don't. Obviously, I hope Wales win, but if Wales win, it's the first Wales game of the World Cup I'll actually be able to watch as a fan. Every other one I've been working on, but the reason is because the following morning I'm up at 3 a.m. I start work for Wales women's WXV tournament out in New Zealand, which very excited for. Great initiative, really happy to see that's going on, and so excited for the WXV. On the other hand, if Wales get through to the first final ever, I will have to go, yeah, sorry guys, enjoy your night out for the first once in a generation achievement that we're all doing. I'm going to be in bed because I'm up at 3 a.m. tomorrow. Alternatively, I could stay up, but that will be a 3 a.m. till 10 shift. So that won't be happening, I don't think, either.
I don't think you'd be the only one that will stay up all through that. I think there'll be a lot of people watching that game that have stayed up. But gents, it's time to wrap things up again. It's been an absolute pleasure again this week. And all the very best for the game against the Ospreys. I say that to anyone that's playing the Ospreys, but I really genuinely hope go again. And fingers crossed, we'll come back. We'll do it all again next week. All the best.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be 2 for 2. We'll have more positive stuff to talk about.
See what I mean about you go back up at the end.
Yeah, that's it.
It's dip at the
We
end.
have to end on a positive. If it's just sour and dour all the time, no one's going to want to listen to us.
Let's go the whole hog.
Anyway.
Let's go the whole hog. We win the Champions Cup. Let's just say it. We're all thinking it.
Well, we currently are the lowest odds, the worst odds. So I have put a little punt on it. Which if it comes in, which it won't, at least that'll pay for the beer because I'll be drinking a lot of it if we win the Champions Cup.
Yeah, well, I might do the same thing and say it's mortgage money for the future.
I say you never know, but I think we all know. But it's only a fiver, isn't it? But it's good odds if it comes through, which it won't. But you have to back your team because no one else is going to do it for you.
Excellent. On that note, we definitely will end the pod. All the best. Have a good one, Jen.
Yeah, all right. Cheers, Lee. Thank you.